Okay, so our guest today has a front row seat to what the world is watching. Paul Wood leads global research and insight at Fremantle. From talent shows to drama hits, his team shapes some of the most watched and most loved shows on screen. He's clearly curious, but when I spoke to Paul, I was struck by how generous he is. He's brilliant at what he does, and I feel really lucky to have him here today. Paul, welcome.
Thank you very much. Generous, I think, is probably overstating it, but thank you very much for the compliment. It's lovely to be.
Oh, no, I don't think so at all. I think you've got a very generous spirit and kind of instantly offered up to come on this podcast, speak to us today. So thank you so much. We're going to talk a lot about you, Paul. I'm really interested in your perspective on all things kind of insight and how we can influence decisions and help businesses really think consumer first. I mean, you've got a very interesting role in that you work in a business and an industry that so many people have got an opinion on. I'm really interested to know what sort of really drives you. Why do you bother, I guess?
Why do I bother? I suppose that's the thing. Why do most people bother doing anything? If you really want to know why I do this, I kind of fell into it like most people. I couldn't become a professional cricketer because I wasn't good enough. I wasn't rich enough to become a kind of professional party planner traveling the world. Although I do love a good party, of course. But I kind of fell into it about 20 odd years ago. And look, I really enjoy it. Understanding people, understanding kind of audiences, customer, whatever you want to however you want to frame it, has been kind of honed for a long time now. And it's very much part of my personal purpose.
Amazing. Thank you, Paul. I would love to hear a little bit more about what's kind of influenced you across your kind of career so far. And I have a question that I really like, and it just reflects on people whose words might still kind of rattle around your mind at certain decision moments, or you might kind of reflect on. And it is, who do you owe so far?
So number one is the exec coach Ruth Alliance from the from the Alliance Coaching company. She literally transferred how my thinking around professional setting kind of works, what to focus on and how to be successful. So I really think that without her, I wouldn't be where I am today. And then two others, just quickly. Sorry, I know I'm rambling. The two people within the business. So my ex-boss within Fremantle, who's now retired, a guy called Rob Clark, who was the director of global entertainment. He saw something in me many years ago, kind of gave me that chance to kind of progress and kind of really backed me for a number of years. So I'm really grateful for the support that he gave. I mean, he could be really demanding, but I think he helped in that growth. So there's the growth there as well within the business. And then finally, the ex-HR director here at Fremantle as well, somebody called Nikki Gray, was very much a kind of guiding light and a supporter and a kind of sounding board for everything that I was kind of doing over the years. So I think there's many different people in terms of when I was reflecting on this over the years, in terms of changing my thinking, understanding who I am, giving me a chance, and then kind of looking after and kind of supporting me.
Amazing. So you've hinted at a few things that seem kind of big priorities for you. I would be really interested to know what comes to mind when I ask, what are your secrets? Influencing in a business, getting people to think about consumer or audience, can be challenging. Everybody's got a view. I'd love to hear some of your kind of experience on sort of what really works in this industry.
So obviously you could say it's about being kind of smiley and it's about being approachable and it's doing things with a joke. But I don't think that's really kind of what works in this particular industry. I don't think it works in most places, because you're trying to get human connection with others within any industry, because that's how you make kind of things happen and that's how the influence happens. So I think fundamental to me is being personable. It's being open in your thinking. I'm analytical within situations. So my mind is processing. I'm able to summarize really well. I'm able to kind of relay that back to people. So it shows that I'm actively listening. So listening properly to what people are really trying to say is I think fundamental. But I suppose really, if you kind of it can go back to my purpose, actually, which there's something within that and that this works well, which is whenever I hear anything, I have this kind of 3 steps that I kind of take on, which is I review things. Is that right? Is it wrong? Is it like, what am I taking from that? And then once I've realized what I want to take from it, what I think is right, or whether I'm going to take it because I think it's wrong and that's useful in a different way, I reframe my thinking at that moment. And I'm able to do this as I'm kind of going through conversations, when I'm talking to different people, or whether I'm reflecting on the way home on the train or whatever it is. And once you've reframed that within your mind, you've then got refreshed thinking. So that is a really important part of what you're trying to do with people, because you're trying to understand them. But if you're not open to listening and learning from others as well, I think that's going to kind of push you back a little bit. So yeah, so I think that's one of the kind of key things in terms of how I try to kind of influence. So active listening, really trying to take things on board, and then obviously trying to make a difference, and doing all of that in a really kind of properly personable way. So in fact, there's my daughter who's 19 now. She was in doing a week's kind of work experience about 6-7 weeks ago, and she said to me, "I understand why you're so tired when you get home in the evenings now." And I said, "Well, that's just because I'm getting old now." And she said, "No. She said, lots of people said to me that what you do is that you know everybody's name across the business. You make it a point to always know whoever they are, whether it's anybody, any level, because then that's important to them." And I said, "Well, no, I do it because that's just how I do things. I try to, everybody's important. Everybody's got to give it a good job. So if you have that as your kind of fundamental kind of thinking when you're in the office, I think that sets you apart as well. A lot of people don't do that. Some people only speak to certain people. They walk around as if, there's a closed environment. We're one business. We've got 3 different businesses within this business. We have our sales business, we have our kind of UK production, and we have our global head office. But it's all one business, and we should all be interacting. We should all know everything that's going on. So I think there's a lot of different things. There's not one secret sauce, I don't think, to kind of how you can kind of have that influence. But I think it's about being open and personable is probably the kind of the best way to summarize it.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, even when you were talking there, I was just thinking about when the credits roll and you realise that characters that have been barely referred to have got first and surnames rather than, it's that sort of moment, isn't it? It makes things feel really meaningful.
Exactly, because and you want to relate to those people. So the surname in that kind of person who had one line was important to that person who was playing that character, because they're able to understand, okay, because a certain surname and kind of first name together obviously has different connotations depending on what they are. And so that helps that individual. Just understanding people and having those conversations. Also, I like to learn from everybody. So having those conversations with all different people across the business, all ages, is so important in terms of reframing and refreshing my thinking about things as well. That's what
My
I
next question is almost sort of the flip side of some of that stuff. I'm really interested to know what hurts, what feels like you're still kind of in the midst of working through. Maybe you're having to pivot a bit or rethink, or I don't know, you're sort of still in the middle of something. You haven't got all it sort of figured out yet.
I don't think I'm ever going to get everything all figured out, if I'm honest, Laura. And I think that's the beauty of kind of not being kind of stagnant and always trying to progress and always trying to learn. But I suppose if we wanted to talk about it from a kind of business perspective a little bit, and I think it goes back to what we were talking a little bit ago. It's like audiences, they don't know what they want, right? As we all know. So kind of customers put their kind of faith in brands to kind of help them kind of make certain decisions. And they also, audiences put their faith in certain types of content to, make them feel entertained. And as I said, we always get that question, what does this audience want? But it's incredibly difficult. We can make some things up. We can obviously come up with some various different kind of key learnings, but that's not going to help you nail that show. There's a whole range of things that's going to go on behind the scenes and then on camera and then in post that is going to fundamentally determine whether that is successful or not. In terms of current challenges that I think we're kind of facing, particularly in the TV industry, let's talk about fragmentation in terms of audiences. So audiences are in so many different kind of little micro kind of pots now. It's so different to when I first started, when there was a much more kind of broader sense of what people were watching, and equally we knew how and when they were watching, and we got the data behind that. Now, with the kind of expansion of kind of global streaming platforms, audiences on multiple different kind of devices and ways to view all over the world, I think it's incredibly difficult to kind of come up with what's the biggest show at the moment. Because you can know it on a platform, but then there might be another platform that's not giving those numbers. So I think with the excitement and expansion of the way that people consume, which is obviously great for that for the audience, it makes the job of what we try to do, which is try to understand what's working, far more complicated and more expensive.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's had such a sort of shake up in the last few years. You almost don't appreciate it. I think when you step back, there would be things that you almost, as you wouldn't, I don't think, but as a researcher, sort of looking kind of more broadly at consumer, you get kind of surprised by certain kind of habits. Actually, there are still people who watch kind of linear telly, and there are people who just kind of don't own telly. Where are they consuming that? There's so many more kind of possibilities now. I think that must make things very challenging for you.
Well, I totally agree. So even within the industry, within the business, so there's a thing called the overnights. So in the UK, the overnights is the kind of ranking of viewing on the previous day of just the viewing of that day. And for years and years and years, that was the barometer of success. So at 9:30 or 9:33 in the morning, everybody's kind of waiting for these numbers to come in to see if their show is successful or not. The problem is people don't consume. The consumer is not doing that. They're watching many different kind of ways now. However, there are still people within the industry that place a huge amount of value on a metric that I believe, and that we stopped many years ago kind of analyzing those, who continue to ask us for those numbers. And yes, it provides a kind of barometer of success, but I just think people are a bit impatient and don't move their thinking on. So when we have to say, no, we need to wait 4 weeks now to kind of properly give you the update on performance, it took a long time for certain people to kind of be willing to wait that amount of time. Then all of a sudden you have the likes of the big global streaming platforms saying, yeah, no, we always wait a month before we assess performance, so we're not going to tell you how it's doing. And then the external is often more impactful than the internal, but they're combined means that we can change the way that people view the performance of the show. So yeah, I would agree that there's lots of change. Constant change is good and bad. You just got to navigate that and try to do the best you can for the business.
One of the big trends that we've seen, we've been running the study for 5 years now, and we see telly watching just increase the amount of time that we're doing it. On a separate part of the survey, we've got this big list of things that could be bad habits, and they're anything from, eating too much, drinking too much, eating the wrong things, whatever. One of the things is too much telly, and that's going down as we watch more. And so our sort of take on that is that we just feel less guilty about it. There's something about it that feels more fulfilling than it has done in the past. And of course, there's other things going on, the moving of the dining room table to the sofa, to telly. But I do think a part of it is so much of what you're talking about, that thing of actually it relieves some of the guilt of just being on your phone because you've got something that keeps you in parallel. And of course, this fascination with telly and how it's made and companion podcasts and all of those sorts of things, they've almost made it more of a sort of a sort of sport, something to be involved in rather than just absorb.
No, I would agree. And I think, I mean, it's good analogy in terms of making it a sport. I think if you're a person and you have a child, if it was 30 years ago, you'd feel guilt about putting them in front of the TV. Now, I don't think there's much guilt about giving them an iPad and putting on Peppa Pig, because it feels like that's actually perfectly acceptable. So as kind of society moves on, and as your kind of research is obviously showcasing, the things that people are hyper focused on in terms of being that kind of negative influence have moved away from the TV, because it's seen as an escape. It's seen as not being in a kind of environment when you're continually in your own space. You have conversations as well around the shows that you're watching. You're probably doing it online. You might be doing it face to face, but it is very much not a stigma, I think, attached to that in the way that it was probably when I was growing up. So I'm glad that your research is kind of backing that up as well.
Yeah, I think people just become so much more kind of deliberate about what they're watching. There's so many kind of moments where I think you can see that show up. But I do think it's interesting. Is an interesting change. So Paul, I'd love to talk a little bit about kind of looking sort of further out into the future, and I'm really interested to know what your take is on how people win, how people kind of keep winning in the realms of kind of customer centricity or audience centricity in businesses.
Well, I could go to the cliches around being curious and all of those things, but I think the fundamental thing, which I've mentioned before, is about excellent storytelling. So you can get all of the information that you want from your amazing company or from your own research or elsewhere, but how you're translating that across and making that different and making that interesting. As I said, people like stories. So how are you telling the story? They don't necessarily like reports and presentations, although we all do reports and presentations. So how are you crafting that? How are you making it engaging? How are we continuing to make sure that we are making content or we're making whatever it is with the customer at the heart or the audience at the heart of what you're doing? Continually trying to do things with passion and with humor, I think is one of the key things that I have. But I think in terms of how we'll be successful in the future, continued learning and innovation. I think you referenced Rory in terms of thinking about things differently. There's loads of those stories of companies that have continued to just do the same thing or iterate. And you can iterate, and that's a good thing, but you should always have some time devoted for those kind of left field kind of thinking ideas. And so I think that's massively important. But that's really important right now with the kind of rapidly changing consumer along with technology. So I think being curious obviously underpins it, but ensuring that you are trying to make a difference and you're actually trying to change things for the better. I think that, I don't know whether that makes a lot of sense, but in terms of, are you making that change or are you innovating in the right way? I think that's going to be really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you said in the middle there about humor, and the importance of humor. I think, people talk about, enjoying what you do and having, fun at work and passion, and they talk about those sorts of things. We don't often hear people talk about humor, but just how important it is, not just at work, but also in the realm of insight and research. If there's permission to be humorous with the topic, you can reveal so much more about what people really think than sort of playing it sort of straighter and slightly more rational. I think humor often gets underestimated.
I think it's one of the fundamental things that we have to do, particularly as an insight professional, is you the way that you get engagement is often through the things that you are saying about the things you want to say. That makes sense. So you might have your kind of key underlying 10 pieces of insight that you want to get across. How you get those things across has to be delivered with passion, has to be delivered with humor. And whether that's a one-to-one conversation in an office or a meeting room or a presentation to hundreds of people, you've got to be able to find that hook to make people remember.
I mean, hey, I completely agree with you. I was even thinking about, humor, comedians, they learn improv. It's about saying yes. It's about making your team look as good as possible. I think it just comes back to, it feels such a kind of thread of what we've been discussing today.
I agree as well. And also, so difficult news delivered with humor is also appreciated than with the stony face. So if you're, we often have to deliver back to production team the reasons why their show was not successful and were cancelled based on the audience feedback. And you learn quite quickly that obviously that's not you who's saying it. So once you've kind of disassociated yourself with the actual audience kind of feedback, you can make it much more playful and actually more engaging. And then that means that the message that you're delivering to them, which is their show wasn't very good, can be a quite positive conversation. And then how do we learn from that, and what do we do better next time? All of those things. And like, you go into those meetings knowing what you want them to get out of it. And so then you're thinking, well, I can't go in and just completely kind of give all of the negatives. There's different ways of doing that for different people. So yeah, I think if anybody takes anything out of this podcast, try to be funny.
Yeah, absolutely. I see so much in how you describe that. There'd be a real sort of buoyancy to that, and it just sort of focuses you on what's next, what's possible, which I think is really inspiring. I can totally see. We started this conversation with you talking about your purpose, and I can totally see that come out in so many parts of your conversation around sort of inspiring others and how you approach things. Thank you so much for talking to me today, Paul. I've really enjoyed it.
Good. It's been really great talking to you as well, Laura. Thank you for inviting me on.